Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. This is our second Build Your Career Forum, but our first virtual one because of the COVID-19 situation. So if you're a student, we welcome you. I mentioned once, if we can see your face or you can type interactively on the chat, we'd love to have that interaction with you. Our presenters, like Jeremy mentioned, who's going to be presenting, we see each other all the time. So it's nice to see new faces. But we welcome you. The goal of this event is for the sessions you signed up for. You're able to listen to people that are in the workforce in those industries. And, they may have come from different backgrounds, but they are working in that field. And hopefully that'll give you some insight if that's something you're interested in. After the event's over, your session's over, Mrs. Johnson has recorded these. She'll have them available if you want to go back or hear any that you didn't sign up for. I am the executive officer for the Quad City Builders and Remodelers Association, and we're always here to help any students, whether you're in high school or after high school, to connect with businesses in the community that are in the building and remodeling industry. So if there's something you're interested in and you're just not sure how to connect to those businesses, that's what my job is. I'm here to help you. So you're always welcome to give me a call or shoot me an email. Your counselor can always help you connect to us too, but we're online so you can find us. I'm going to let Tishly Herrington from EICC take over. She's going to moderate today and she'll keep things moving. So welcome.
Good morning. I'm Tishly, obviously, and as Julie mentioned, my role today is just to help. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat and I'll be sure that they get asked. We might have time at the end for you to unmute and ask some questions if you want to, but otherwise I'm going to get out of the way and turn this over to Marcus Campbell from Best Improvement and to Jeremy Devol from Seiffert Building Supplies. So gentlemen, take it away.
All right. Jeremy, do you want to start?
I'll let you go first. How about that?
Okay, sure. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Campbell. As you can see, I'm the sales manager for Best Improvement. We specialize in remodeling projects such as siding, windows, and doors. And thanks so much for being here. I'll tell you a quick brief history of myself. First off, I graduated from Riverdale. Do we have anyone from Riverdale? If you want to put it in the chat. I graduated there in 2007, and then I went on and got a bachelor's degree in business management in 2011. I've been with Best Improvement ever since, going on now my 10th full year. I am living proof that while you're interviewing and accepting job offers, to go with a good company, not just a good job at the current time. Don't be afraid to ask long-term options in your job interviews. That should be one of your biggest concerns. I started off near the bottom and made a very good career. I started off making $12 an hour, averaging 50 some hours a week. I did every role you could ever imagine. I'd do service. I'd run and get our crew's supplies. I'd unload our delivery trucks, do yard work, painted, canvassed. For those of you that aren't in the sales world, that means knocking doors. Yes, I'd knock doors trying to create sales leads for our sales staff. And I would even go and run sales leads in the evenings with our sales staff as well. But most of the time, I spent my time on the job sites, and I tried to soak in every single detail that I could. I loved, and still to this day, I still love hands-on labor. And I saw the potential that crew leaders had financially then and now. Some of the best ones do make up close to six figures, $100,000. If you're very efficient and you're very good at what you do and you're willing to work long and hard, you absolutely can make that much. But my personal passion was always sales. I love sales. Now, I am back to working a lot of hours. I do work 50 some hours a week. Including at least a couple evenings a week and most Saturdays. My sales approach is probably a little different than most. I do not use the high pressure, high persuasion sales that people like to stereotype car salesmen with. I always say I try to outperform and out-inform rather than out-pressure or out-persuade. And my years of experience with the hands-on labor and the finer details of the products and the installing has helped me immensely with my success. Now, if some of you are interested in sales, and even those of you that aren't, I want you to remember this. Now, pretend you're out on a first date and you're trying to sell yourself to a potential significant other. What is something you're going to look for? I bet the answer is something that relates to yourself. Anything. It could be hobbies, your background, sports, music, whatever it might be. They always say the largest word that you can get in the word relationship is relate. You're just looking to relate. If you can find any way possible to relate to your customers and learn to listen, yes, I said listen more than speak. Everyone, when someone says, oh, he's a big gabber, he's going to be a good salesman. No, a gabber would be a terrible salesman. A good salesman needs to be able to focus and listen more than speak. If you can learn to relate and listen, you can make a killing in sales. Now, I don't want to lie to you. There is a lot of pressure in sales. If the sales staff isn't doing their job, really the rest of the company doesn't matter. No sales means no work. So I'm in my 6th year in sales, and this year, with the help of 2 storms that the Quad Cities has had, I'm having my best year ever. This year, I'm going to make actually just under 6 figures, just under $100,000 this year. Now, I was not a part of the program like the one you're in, but looking back, I really wish that I was. It took me a really long time getting comfortable with the equipment that we use and getting comfortable with heights. My advice to you is learn every hands-on skill you can. And then also, other than that, network within your program. Get phone numbers, create, I don't want to say friendships, that would be great, but at least comfortable relationships within your program, because down the road, whether it be in your career or your personal life, you're going to need help. And someone in your program could help you. And if you could start your referral network now, you're going to be way ahead of where I was when I started my career. And then that's all that I have. Thank you so much for being a part of the program, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Well, thanks, Marcus. First and foremost, I want to say I second everything he just said. There's a lot of similarities with my background. It sounds like with Marcus's, a little bit different focus in our careers, but a little bit about myself. Jeremy Devol, sales manager over at Seiffert Building Supplies. Been in the building business since I was 18 years old, right out of high school. Started off as a part-time job over the summer and developed into a lot of hard labor, working out in the yard at a lumber yard, and then worked my way up into getting into sales. Found my passion was working with the detailed intricacies of historical type projects, doing a lot of restoration work with certain brands of windows and doors that meet historical requirements across the country. Really got into that. Really enjoyed working with preservation specialists, traditionalists in the business that really focus on some of the finer details that you don't typically get. With that, things have kind of grown from there. I've been with Seiffert for 12 years, done a lot of things at Seiffert, worn a lot of hats. To Marcus's points, being in our business, there really isn't a 40-hour work week if you really want to succeed and do a good job for yourself and for your customers. A lot of that is based on your passion for pleasing people, solving problems, or making money. Everyone has their own motivation and their own passions in life. And when you look at some of those details, how I got started, I didn't do anything in high school that would have even pertained to anything that I'm doing except for maybe math. Beyond that, what I've found is that looking inward, looking at myself and some of the things that I found that I really enjoyed has funneled me through this area of being in sales, getting into management, working in building materials in general. And I've really thrived at it. Looking at that, moving on to some of the things that I found that were quintessential with the things that I had done in my past, that anybody can do, that everyone should do as they're looking to get into any career, is the basics of showing up on time, being professional, working hard at what you like to do, and sometimes what you don't like to do, because in reality, not everything is roses out there. But if you make the best of it, you really can succeed in life in general. Looking at some of the things that I found pretty promising in a lot of the careers that I've had within this business, there's a lot of problem solving. You have the ability to be creative, looking at different angles of different windows or doors and seeing how they can fit into a building, and then working with siding and window and door installers. Those are the guys that are out there. They're in the cold, they're in the hot, they're swinging hammers, they're lifting heavy objects, they're, to Marcus's point, being up in the air quite often, which I'm not a huge fan of. But being out there and working with those guys that are actually physically doing the work, and getting your hands dirty with them too, is always pretty rewarding. Again, back to that, no college training. I've had a lot of other training, been to a lot of training sessions all over the country, actually, with different window and door manufacturers and installers and service crews. And so there's a lot that goes into that, and it's not just sitting at a desk. It's not just meeting with customers. It's not just talking to installers. It runs the whole gamut. And I've had a lot of enjoyment doing that. Dollar-wise, if you're looking at salary, again, to Marcus's point, if you're willing to work hard, and not just necessarily see, staring at a computer all the time, if that's the case, you have the ability to make up to 6 figures or more. And it really depends on a lot of relationship building, working with your current customers, suppliers, your employees, your managers. That's always something that you have to consider. There's always going to be somebody over you watching you and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for the benefit of yourself and for the company. And there's a lot to that. But yeah, definitely the biggest things that I find are the basics. Again, being able to work with others, showing up on time, be professional, be polite, and work hard. And I think anybody would be able to succeed. So thank you. I appreciate your guys' time this morning.
Okay, so are you gentlemen going to tell us a little bit more about what a typical day might look like for you? Or do you have, there you go.
Sure, I can start with that. I meet my crews at our office every day at 7:30 and get them the materials that they need for the project for the rest of the day. And then honestly, from there, there's no telling. I usually do not set appointments in the mornings because I try to make sure that we usually have 3 or 4 crews going at all times. I really want to make sure they have no hiccups in their work day. I want to make sure that them and the homeowner are happy, are on the same page, that they have the materials they need. And then usually lunchtime is when I will actually sit and get caught up on my emails and my texts and some of my sales leads. And then the afternoon, I'll spend with either our service rep, making sure he knows exactly what he needs to get done, our one-man service crew, kind of a one-man installation crew. And then the afternoons, I'm running sales leads. I try to run 2 a day on average, sometimes only 1 if I'm a little overwhelmed. I usually average about 8 sales leads a week. And but that's my typical day. Usually I'm with the crews in the mornings. Lunchtime, I get caught up at on my emails and calls. And then afternoon, I'm with my service rep, and my sales leads.
Yeah, I can mirror that. My day starts pretty early. I'm an early morning guy myself. But typically what I see is I'm in the office by 6:30. That's when I kind of catch up on afternoon emails from the day before. start looking at projects that I've got coming up, very similar to what Marcus does, making sure that deliveries are being coordinated properly, making sure my customers are being taken care of, their expectations of having product out when, for that day. That's pretty important. Again, wear a lot of hats, especially this year. Going into this year was a good winter. We thought things were going to kind of crash with COVID and everything that's going on, but it's actually been just the opposite. So there's been a lot of different hats to wear, and some days I play boss, some days I play service guy and delivery guy, and it kind of just changes on a daily basis. But that's probably one of the exciting things, is that there's not always the same thing to do every day, which is pretty fun.
Absolutely.
So we do have a question from a student. Paige would like to know, is there a class you wish you would have taken in high school or paid more attention in?
I can say the one thing and I've told my children, math was one of the things that I didn't take too seriously, and I do it all day, every day. That is the one thing that is constant in my job. Geometry, I find probably more so than anything, but in reality, math in general, that's one of the things that had to learn as I was getting a little older and getting used to it. Knew the basics, but that was about the extent of it.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Geometry, at least know the basics. At least know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's a good one. Math, definitely. And then because I maybe have my business background, and I'm guessing most of you are going to go and do the hands-on part of the thing, or the installing part of the trades. I would even suggest possibly a basic accounting class, actually. You don't have to, be as knowledgeable as, say, a business owner, but knowing the basics of accounting, because I know in my business, a lot of people are called what's called a subcontractor, which basically means they're running their own business. And if you can learn how to, write off equipment and how to show a profit and know when and how to hire people, that would help as well. So I would maybe even recommend a basic accounting class.
And to your point, Marcus, there's a lot of that where in your personal lives, having an accounting that you can help better manage your finances, pay bills, make sure you have a savings. I mean, all that is beneficial, whether it's within a career or in your own personal lives.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm going to say one thing too, I think might be important. I know public speaking is, in high school, a lot of students don't like to get up there and talk, but that is one thing I know will pay off for you in the long run. You'll get better at it, more comfortable with it. But I know Jeremy and Marcus can say that, speaking in front of people is their daily job. And sometimes you might have to go into like a business and talk to a group of people. So I know everyone takes public speaking. So pay attention in that class, because I think down the road, that'll benefit you greatly once you get out into a career.
So another question that we have is, how did you choose the company that you currently work for? And are there other companies that you could work for around the Quad City area?
From what I've found, being in the business as long as I have been, what I've found is I've always kind of gravitated towards the privately owned businesses or family run businesses. Corporate, I've worked in the corporate world, and enjoyed the people that I worked with. Just personally felt that I was just a number in a lot of the different scenarios. So I've always been attracted to family owned businesses where you are a person. They do treat you well in most cases, and they take care of you. Through all the stuff that's going on with COVID, my own personal business has done very well taking care of their employees, and everyone's been appreciative of that. That being said, that's kind of where I've landed, why I've landed within the business that I am, because it's a family-owned business that's been around since 1892. That longevity, the fact that the current owners that are transitioning out of being owners have been with the company since the 60s. So there's a lot of family history there that really attracted me. And there are a lot of other companies that are like ours. Unfortunately, some of them are dying off. But there are a lot of businesses, and hopefully even more so going into the future, locally that would be right in line with exactly what I do and why I I've chosen my path.
Yep. So my path, ours is a family business. I will actually be the second generation president here in the next few years. It is my parents' business. I started off as a kid. I would help every way I could. We bought our office when I was 10 years old, and we flipped it, and I was there almost every evening and every weekend helping flip that office into what my parents wanted. I've loved this business since I was a kid. I can remember my dad waking me up in the morning and saying, we just need an extra helping hand lifting in a big 10-foot wide bow window. And I loved it. And I still to this day, I love it. Now I want to get to this point. You teenagers that are listening, this is a tremendous industry to be in. It is unbelievably demanding right now. We desperately need people in every part of the industry. Sales, service, installations, all of it. We're really, so many companies are short-staffed. And if you get good in this industry, you'll never be unemployed more than a day, ever. There's so much demand for this. You know, they're saying, oh, computers are going to take over the world. And, you know, they will take over a lot of jobs. They'll never install a window. They'll never install a door. Good carpenters and good electricians and plumbers are always going to be needed. And if your company's sales staff isn't doing their job, or you can't get along with management, you could send out a mass email to the other companies in your industry in the area, and you'll be hired in no time. It's just a tremendous industry to be a part of.
Agreed.
So within the industry, how close do the areas of siding and windows work together?
Extremely close. It literally goes hand in hand, especially in this day and age. And I'm sure Marcus can attest to this with the two storms that we've had this year. Back to his point, you literally are replacing siding and windows more than likely this year, especially at the exact same time. So it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Sometimes you don't want to do siding, but you're replacing your windows, and that kind of forces you to do siding, and vice versa. We see that a lot in our business.
Yep. Absolutely, very related. The equipment's very similar that you need. I know a lot of our crews, they have work trailers. They don't have to switch out their equipment. It's almost all identical, same tools you're going to be using. I will say the windows and door side compared to the siding, we're lucky with our business, but windows and doors, I'd say you have to be a little bit more, clean cut. You can't swear. You can't be a heavy smoker. You're in people's homes. Whereas in siding, you can be outside, it's a little bit muddier probably. So windows and doors is probably a little bit more expertise. There's trim work involved. You're in more contact with the homeowner, so you have to be a little bit more respectable, a little bit better of a speaker. So just know that. But I will say that the windows and doors, at least from what I've seen, is under more demand, because I think it probably takes a little bit more carpentry skill. There's a little bit more involved to it.
So let's talk a little bit about apprenticeships. Neither of you sounds like went through a formal apprenticeship, but Marcus, especially you, sounds like you kind of went through an apprenticeship as you came up in the business. But do either of the businesses, or are there apprenticeships within the business for an entry-level person to learn the trade and move up that way?
Mm-hmm. So our personal company, we don't really have an apprenticeship, but if you're starting, say you're 17, 18 years old and you're interested, what we would do is we'd start you off at $15 an hour, and you get $1 an hour raise every 3 months until you become a crew leader. And then those guys make very good money, and they have the choice of either staying an employee with us or subcontracting. But both of our subcontractors still work for us full time. So we do not particularly have an apprenticeship with us, but there are a lot of companies that do. a lot. And I saw one of the questions that said, how long does it take to really move up the ladder in this business to really get into the big bucks? That's a really good question. I don't have an exact answer to that question, but I will say this. If you were to get into, I know I have a good friend that is a manager of a commercial roofing union company. They do a lot of the roofs for John Deere and the Arsenal and schools. And they start off about the same wage that we do in the teens, and they don't get their next big promotion, their next big raise, and I'm talking about getting into the upper 20s per dollar an hour until you've worked 10,000 hours. 10,000 working hours. Now they average about 45 to 50 hours a week, and that 5 to 10 hours a week overtime is time and a half. So if you work 50, it would go into the books as 55 if you're doing the math there. They do not get their promotion, big time pay raise until 10,000 hours, but then they're living very comfortably after that.
Yeah, and on my end, yes. Again, to Marcus's point, there's no true apprenticeship program within our business. There are a lot of training opportunities, a lot of career building opportunities. We do pay for schooling if there's specific schooling that somebody's interested in doing. And we do also have a lot of different areas within our company that people have excelled. We have CDL drivers. We've got yard guys that load trucks and drive forklifts all day long. We've got store employees that help customers out, stock shelves, do inventory. So we've got a lot of different areas. But again, back to that point, we don't technically do apprenticeship programs, but you do get paid to be on the job and have the training to move in whatever area you'd like.
And just to add to my 10,000 hour point, as a teenager, you're like, oh my God, that seems like a century. It's not. If you do the math, it's about 4 years. And as I've seen my particular crews grow, that's a pretty good rule of thumb. I've seen some that can grow as quick as 3 years, and I've seen some that take 5. But that's a pretty good rule of thumb where you start making the big bucks, living really comfortably and, getting more on your plate. About 10,000 working hours. That's a pretty good rule of thumb.
It sounds like it's more of an on-the-job training than an apprenticeship. And with on-the-job training, they could start that, you mentioned, at 17 or 18. So do they need a high school diploma, or could they be doing that as juniors and seniors?
Our company would ask for a high school diploma. Yep. We would, and I can tell you a lot wouldn't. Many businesses in this industry would not, but we particularly would. But I still do recommend taking as many of these hands-on classes as possible. I went and got a college degree. I've never in my working life used calculus in my career, ever. I'm not saying don't go take it, but I particularly have never used calculus. Okay, I've never used chemistry. I think you're getting more out of the hands-on classes in this program than you would in those classes.
Yeah,
Marcus, and Jeremy, I have a question real quick. So if a student is like, say, 11th grade and their summer before their senior year, is there something they could do like part-time, like helping out? I don't know what each of you would have, but just to get them introduced, do you have anything like that where you hire kids for the summer?
We have in the past. There's been some light duty work that can be done. I mean, unfortunately, in our business, there is some hands-on. There's a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of moving equipment, and that can get a little dicey. And insurance companies don't like a lot of kids on site that are under the age of 18. That being said, we do have opportunities for helpers, if you will, in the summertime. Then we've worked with local Eastern Iowa community colleges to do some internships in our kitchen design department, which we were kind of hoping to do that again here soon, but who knows how that's going to go. But so there are some opportunities there as well.
I'm just about exactly what Jeremy said. If you're still got another year left of school, there, in our minds, there's probably only so much that you could add. But of course, we need the lifters. We have multiple delivery trucks every week. we have a yard we have to take care of. Yeah, there's almost always something that can be done, especially summer. That's the hot and heavy time of the year, where you know, the managers are overloaded and we don't have time to do that kind of stuff. Painting, trim work, you know, that kind of stuff. Running and getting supplies. Yeah, absolutely. And you will get a lot out of that opportunity. You're going to learn more just by showing up than anything else. So it would be a good opportunity.
So you both spoke to this a little bit, but to make a further point of it, how important is teamwork? Do your groups, you mentioned team leaders and such, Marcus, but how much teamwork is needed in a career in this field? And is it really valued? Is it important for high school students or anybody coming out and into the business to understand how important teamwork is? Or is it important in what you do?
It is. It's unbelievably important, especially at your age as teenagers. You're not going to start off on your own. You're going to have to learn from experienced people. So it's incredibly important that you need to be able to be, you don't have to be friends with your coworkers. Of course, we don't ask that, but you do have to be respectful. Yeah, teamwork is huge. We have, like I said, 4 crews, and then we have a one-man kind of full-time service guy. He's the only one of our workers that works by himself, and even him, he'll work with our team members, with our other crew leaders, probably half the time. So almost our entire company works with teams.
Yeah, that's, again, second that. Looking at the crews, rarely ever do you have just one guy out on a job site. Usually there's at least a couple of guys, especially if things need to be lifted and as things are kind of being moved around and put in place, whatever that situation looks like. In my position, particularly, especially when I'm looking at sales, some of my job is what I do individually, but a lot of my job is what I do with my other employees. Working with them hand in hand to coordinate deliveries, working with them to get quotes out, working with them to work with other customers while I'm out of the office. There's a lot of team effort there that makes that train keep going down the tracks, if you will.
So to go along with that, how important are skills like critical thinking or problem solving? Do you get to, if you're a creative person, do you get to use that in this business? What about those pieces?
Unbelievably important. There's never a dull moment in this business. Look, everyone knows a handyman. Everyone knows a handyman, whether it be a friend, family member, neighbor. So if you know you have some 800 square foot house ranch that you could side the entire thing with a step ladder, we as contractors, we don't do a lot of those. Everyone hires a handyman for that. We get the more complicated projects that take design, creativity, really hands-on skills. So critical thinking is unbelievably important. I mean, just yesterday, my siding crew leader that's been an employee of ours for 11 years, he's kind of stumped on how to do something. And he took a video and he said, I'm going to have to do some research on this tonight, as in last night, to try to figure out what I want to do today. So there's always something new. You have to problem solve and critical think, I mean, daily.
Yeah, exactly. I see a lot of that too in my business, and that actually, when you're working with customers, on my end, working with contractors, especially, a lot of them come to you as a source of knowledge, of experience, and looking at, hey, you know, I'm getting myself into a remodeling situation or something along those lines. How do I do this? And having some experience, having a breadth of product knowledge, as well as back to the point of being, you know, working with a team. There's people that I work with that have been doing this for 40 years. And they've got a lot more experience than I do. And you know, being able to kind of bounce ideas off of them. Ideally, the point is being able to solve a problem for a customer, whether it's a homeowner, contractor, whoever it is. That usually is what makes you important to them. And vice versa, and that's where you garner those relationships. But that is literally an ongoing thing on a daily basis.
So what about helping you pay for college or training or tools, what kind of incentives do your companies provide for their employees?
We have the ability to work with the local community colleges to garner some training for individuals that are interested in doing so, furthering their business education, or if it is a trades. In reality, being a carpenter, being a framer, whatever, that's a little bit different in our business. But one of the biggest things that we find is looking for CDL drivers, looking for delivery guys, on the road guys. They're delivering products back and forth. It's been a challenging few years for us to find good people that are willing to come into work and get in a truck and deliver materials all day long. So what we found is working with the younger generations, bringing them in to the business, starting them off in the yard, getting them to get the product knowledge, will actually pay for them to get their CDL to where they can eventually get to a point where they will be out doing the deliveries that we need.
Yep. Same with us. We don't work directly with colleges or, expanded education, say through community colleges, but I have hired 2 people through Blackhawks trades program. And actually one guy's been with us 6 years and he's about to become our next siting crew leader. So I'm not saying absolutely do that. Everyone's got a different route to their career success, but I do think it'd be helpful, extending your skills. And he's tremendous. He really had the skills from day one. Now he's just kind of learning the communication part. So we don't work directly with colleges. We don't pay for education. We're a pretty small company. And I'm not going to lean you one way or another to go to college or not. But those classes would help you without question.
So what about tools? If I were to come into the trade, are you going to provide me with the tools, or are there tools that I need to bring, to come into it? Or, do I acquire my own working tools? Or like I said, would you help me have those?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yep. So with our company, we provide all what we would call heavy equipment: the extension ladders, step ladders, the brake, saws. The only thing that you would need to provide is hand tools. A drill, a hammer, snips, utility knife, that kind of stuff. Doesn't need to be fancy. I mean, I think $50 would probably get you there. So everything else we provide for you.
Our contractors that I work with, some of them do provide tools for their carpenters, for their crew. Some of them don't. For us in particular, on a sales standpoint, just to kind of spin it a little bit, working in the sales field, working in our business, there's tools that you need to have in order to accomplish your goals when it comes to sales. A vehicle, a phone, a computer. Those are the tools that I use on a daily basis to accomplish the job that I have. And then really, getting into that, there's a lot of other things that go with that. So on that side of it, yes, our company does pay for those things in order for you to do your job.
My space bar wasn't working to let me unmute anymore. Okay, so we did have a question, but I think we've gotten it answered, but I'm going to say it out loud just in case the student who asked doesn't see it in the chat. So a student asked if either of you provide summer jobs or weekend jobs for students. You both answered that a little bit with yes, there are some. It would be an entry level, running for supplies, helping load, unload, those kinds of things, light work kind of thing. But then from there, I want to open it up. Students, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, please go ahead and do so at this time. Do we want to maybe get out of the presentation and go back to a full screen so that, because maybe we've got, I can't see everybody, but maybe we've got a face we can look at in there. Maybe not. Maybe if a student wants to ask a question, they can open up and show us their beautiful, smiling, early morning faces. But to give you a chance to get going, I'm going to ask one more question. So you talked about this just a little bit when you first opened up, but pathways for advancement. What kind of pathways are there in the field? I really liked the comment about think long-term. Don't just take the job because it's going to pay you right now, but think about where the job can take you throughout your career. So if either of you want to touch on those for a second, and then students, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Yeah. There's a lot of routes you can go in this game. I always loved the sales. I knew that was more hours, but I'm like I said earlier, I'm sure most of you really like the hands-on part of it, and that's probably the part of the trades that are most demanding right now are the hands-on skills, the good carpenters. So I can tell you right now, out of my 4 crews, the 2 that make the most money, which I know really catches your attention at 17, 18 years old, and maybe it should, that's fine. They are known as what's called a subcontractor, which means they run their own business inside their business. They work for us full time, but they're running their own business. They hire who they want. They buy their own equipment. And like I said, they're using accounting to write off, taxes wise, their equipment, their workers, pay, insurance, that kind of stuff. They make their own schedule. They'll work on a set, like if it rains, if we have a rain out during the week, they'll work on a Saturday. They will, those guys make really good money, very, very good money. And that's probably the highest rewarding route to go for the hands-on part of our business, probably. Now we do have 2 other crews that work full-time. They're full-time employees for us. They make tremendous money as well, but we kind of set their schedule for them. And some people don't like that. So, you could go a full-time employee, a crew leader, or you could go a subcontractor and kind of run your own business inside of the business.
Along with that, I've I said earlier about myself and my background, and to your point, Tishly, to your question about advancements in the career. So I literally came in working part-time in the summer, 18 years old, right out of high school, sweeping a warehouse floor. Back to my point of being more drawn and tend to be more, I guess, happier working with family-owned businesses, is that when you work with those types of businesses, if you show ambition, you show up on time, you work hard, you pay attention, you're professional, you're polite, you have the ability to grow. And within those companies, and to your point of Marcus, of picking the right company, not just them picking you for a job and you picking them for a job. Being able to focus in on working with family-owned businesses. A lot of these contractors, they are small-time guys. And if you show that you've got the ambition, you really can grow. Going from a warehouse floor sweeper to potential moving into potential opportunities of management, with myself being a sales manager, and then actually starting next year, I'm going to be part owner of my business. So there's a lot that has happened in that time frame, and it's finally starting to pay off. But I took a little while and was kind of wafting around my younger years trying to decide what I wanted to do, and I really just could have just nailed it down and done it. But that being said, I didn't have the drive and the motivation back then. All I knew was that I needed a paycheck, and it worked out pretty good. Now here we are.
What a great story, Jeremy. I mean, really, from sweeping a warehouse floor to a part owner in a company, that's really encouraging, I would think. It would be for me if I was a student listening to you speak. So students, do you have any questions at all? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them if you have them. I'm going to be quiet for a minute and let somebody do so if they'd like to. I have plenty more questions I can keep asking, but students, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions.
Now would be a
Okay.
great time too to show your bright and awake faces. You've had, this time, about 45 minutes to wake up a little bit, have had that coffee or whatever it is that gets you awake in the morning. So now you can turn on your screen so that we can see you, so that our presenters can see who it is that they've given some information to.
We're going to keep trying, but I'm not sure we're going to be successful there. I have another question that I'm going to ask here. So both of you are in sales. I'm sorry, I have a little chihuahua here that just cannot get through her morning without me. I don't understand it, but so both of you are in sales. So with COVID being a factor now, you've both mentioned the fact that you kind of were afraid that COVID was really going to curtail the business a little bit, but our friends, those storms that came through, were helpful for you. But what about how you're going about sales in these times? I mean, the way we are living right now is a little different than the way we were living prior to March. So when it comes to sales, are you finding that people still want you in person? How has that changed how you're really going about that interaction with your customers? Are you finding more virtual? Are you still doing all in person, or is it some combination of both?
Actually, well, you know what? Go ahead, Marcus.
Okay, I would say the majority of my customers just ask me to wear a mask inside their house. I have had some that won't let me in their house, and then I won't spend quite as much time there. I will do the majority of my bids via email now, whereas last year I really wanted to do it in person. It helped me with my closing rate, you can call it in the sales world, right? So I wanted them to tell me no to my face. But yeah, I'm doing a lot more things via email now. I'm doing my bids via email. I'm doing my invoicing. I'm having people sign their contracts and email them back. So I'm trying to do my part. But the majority of the time when I go and do the sales lead, the majority of the time people do let me in their home, but they just ask me to wear a mask.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the same thing. It is our company policy to have masks on at all times, whether we're in the office, in the showroom, out on the job site, which is totally fine, and I'm really okay with that. That being said, we found it kind of interesting. Actually, we were just having a conversation the other day in the office about how we see both sides of the spectrum. Some customers, to Marcus's point, you know ahead of time that you need to go there and for instance, measure windows or whatever it might be. Most of the time you can do that from the outside to kind of get a ballpark, and they'll specifically request that you do not come to the door. A lot of the people, they won't even come to the door or even be home, just because they don't want to be around anybody, which I get, I totally understand. But then I have some that, I go into their house and they don't even have a mask on, and they say, "Oh, should I put it on?" And it's like, well, I'm not here to tell you, what to do in your own home. I can just tell you that I'll be wearing a mask, and we can move on. Virtually with customers isn't, doing something like this with Zoom isn't something that I've experienced yet. I'm sure if this continues, that might be something, especially if they're out of town, if you will. But speaking of virtually, there's been a lot of virtual meetings between this stuff with the home builders, working with my suppliers, working with my manufacturers. Yeah, at least 3 to 4 times a week, I'm on a computer talking to a screen. That's changed quite a bit. That's unique. I mean, but I think that pretty much anybody can say that that's been a big change this year too.
So we have just about 3 or 4 minutes left. We do have a question from a student. What would a day look like in the business if you were hired after high school?
Yep. So we would put you on the job sites as much as possible. Help in any way, shape, or form. Help set up the equipment. We lift the products themselves. We wouldn't just make you do the hard work. We would, help you learn the actual expertise of the carpentry work as well. But we'd throw you right in the fire, actually, to show you where the money's made. And that's on the job sites. So, but then we'd also have you help around our office as well. But we would probably, the majority of your time would be actually on the job sites themselves.
A lot of what we have to offer when it comes to working at Seiffert, and we're actually in the process of getting ready to start it here pretty soon, is we'd bring you in. Again, we start you kind of similar to how I got started. Helping the guys load trucks out in the yard, stack piles of lumber, organize millwork bins or siding bins or product areas, helping customers help load trucks, keep things cleaned up. That's how the day would start, or that's how a day would look. We usually get started fairly early. Our store technically opens up at 8, but we got contractors lined up at anywhere from 6:45 to 7 o'clock in the morning, ready to get their stuff for the day. So we do get started fairly early, and the store closes at 5. So that's a longer day. Most people don't work from that time, from the very opening time to the end. There's a good mix in between, especially in sales. You're in and out often doing different things, and you're more or less a salary employee. But yeah, as a kid coming in, working in that's definitely where we'd want to get anybody started, to learn the business, learn the product, and then hopefully grow from there.
Tishly, I have a question. I know, like, when you're young, sometimes you're working maybe at fast food or places that are working nights and weekends, things like that. I think one thing that is attractive to jumping into this career field is most of these guys are working early mornings, wouldn't you say, guys?
Oh, yeah.
And you're off. I mean, when you're starting out anyways, as you grow in your career, you might be working some nights and weekends, but like for holidays and things like that, I think one benefit is when you're starting out at a young age, your hours are, I think, more attractive because you're not working till 10 o'clock at night, and you're not working on Christmas and Thanksgiving. When you're in the restaurant business, I mean, I started off that way, you're working nights, weekends, holidays. And I think even though you might be up early, you're not working till 10 o'clock at night, and you have some benefits. Can you guys go into, like, starting off, what kind of benefits that you have to offer for someone coming into this?
Well, what we typically do, actually, you made a couple really good points there, Julie. In reality, banker's hours, if you want to call it that, and I'm sure Marcus can attest to this as well. But as you grow in the business, you could be working, different hours. And there's times where you're sitting at home at night and you're researching stuff, or you're putting bids together because you didn't have time during the day. Usually, that's obviously not when you first get into the career, at least from my end of things. But those hours are great, and you don't know. I did do the fast food thing when I was younger, 16, 17 years old, and did not like any bit of it. And it was the later nights, and it was dealing with interesting characters for customers, employees. That being said, it is rewarding, and bringing that point up actually makes me look back and say, you know what, it is nice that I can get up and go into work early in the morning, and if there's times that I need to, got things to do with the family at 3:30, I can do it. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. But by 5, 6 o'clock at night, I'm home, dinner, and everything's good to go. And but yeah, very valid point. And that's when we're bringing people in. That is the structure. It is banker's hours, if you will, which works out very well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It's not your set in stone 40 hours a week. It does have to sway a little bit. We can't leave a window unwatertight overnight type thing. So it could sway, say, a half hour, 45 minutes at the end of the day a little bit. But like Jeremy said, it is basically your Monday through Friday. We do give our employees an option. We never force Saturdays, but if they want to work Saturdays, they can. This year,
Marcus
we
Rowe.
went so overloaded.
Oh,
they did work a lot. That we did pay them over. I don't want to say they're burnt out, but they are. They've worked a lot of hours this year. So, but we have to work first shift, right? I have friends that are cops. I have a friend that works at Menards. That's in the plumbing department at Menards. I have one that works in a factory that works swing shift. Luckily, they all hate their shifts. I'm 31 years old, and they're still working, the second and third shifts or the swing shifts, and they hate it. They absolutely can't stand it. Luckily, ours is a little more structured than that. It's your basically Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday. When the sun's up. So luckily that's one of the nicer part of the jobs.
So we're over time. However, students, take a look at those the websites that are there for you to find more information. I'm going to ask you 2 super quick questions because we have one more question from a student, and then I want you to give us the one thing that you wish you knew then that you know now. And the student wants to know, how do you keep track of hours? And then give us that super important point everybody should know.
I'll let you go there, Marcus.
Well, how do we keep track of hours? Actually, our crew leaders keep track of, so you're going to start at the entry level. So our crew leaders would keep track of your hours. We've never had, an altercation, a disagreement in it. So that's who would keep track of your hours. As for what do I wish that I would have known back then? Soaking in every detail. I know that's a boring answer. And then as for, of course, this is my business background more than anything. Say, when it comes to the money side of things in your personal life, focus just as much on your spending as you're making. Budget. Every one of you should have a budget. Keep track of all your receipts. Make a budget. I urge all of you, follow Dave Ramsey on YouTube or Twitter. He's the best financial advisor there is. He's free. Okay, follow Dave Ramsey when it comes to money and do exactly what he says.
To the question, the student's question, hours wise. So our hourly employees punch a clock, if you will, not literally. They log into a computer and they say that they're in, and they do that for lunch, and they do that when they go home at the end of the day. Myself, along with my other sales people, we're all salary, so we don't really punch a clock. We know that we have to work. We get in there when we feel like we need to. We get the work done, and we go home. And the one thing that I've learned, and Marcus kind of touched on this earlier, I'm 42 years old. I've been in the business for 26 years. And what I've found is now that I'm a little older and understanding how things work in the sales world, working with different types of personalities, that I wish I would have known back then, is you don't always have to talk. Listen to what people are saying.
My life motto, my favorite slogan in the world is, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. It's so true. That's helped me immensely in sales. People want to know that you care, especially in this business. You're at their home. That is besides their family, that's their pride and joy. So, you got to be trustworthy, and that you have to pitch that you care more than the other person.
Did that come from our friend Zig Ziglar? Is Zig Ziglar the one who said that? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Might have been him. It was somebody like him, if not, I'm sure. So students, thanks so much.
I think
for
so.
taking,
yeah, that rings a bell.
I think it is Zig. So there's another one that you should listen to, students. Zig Ziglar. He's very smart. So students, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us to help these students know more about what you do and just know more to educate themselves and be ready to go when they're done with school. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank
Talk
you.
to y'all later.
Thank you, guys.